a guan?
What's a guan?
That a guan, pa.
What a guan? What a guan?
What a guan? Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 a.m., 1:30 p.m., and 10 p.m. on CVM TV.
And that's a guan, pa. What's a guan?
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Yo, this is Governor representing of the CVM, you know. C-Tappen and CVM right now. Yeah.
It's tax time. There are now 2 due dates for filing final income tax returns. All personal income tax returns, such as self-employed persons, individuals, partners, and partnerships, must file and pay their income tax returns by March 16. For corporate bodies, your income tax return is now due April 15. The due dates for all estimated tax returns filings and quarterly payments remain the same: March 15, June 15, September 15, and December 15. Visit jamaicatax.gov.gm or call 888-TAX-HELP for details. Tax Administration Jamaica, working together to serve you even better.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than
Thanks for joining us for CVM News at noon. It's Tuesday, April 14, 2026. I'm Amoy Harriet. We begin with news coming out of St. Catherine. There were dramatic scenes this morning as a tractor-trailer overturned on Flatbridge in the Bogwalk Gorge sometime after 5 o'clock. Motorists are asked to use alternative routes as the teams are still working to clear the bridge. Reports from the St. Catherine North Police are that the tractor was proceeding southerly towards Spanish Town. Upon reaching the gorge, the driver failed to negotiate the corner of the entrance of the bridge. The trailer veered off the road into the Rehoboth River, while the tractor head remained on the bridge. Head of the St. Catherine North Police, SSP Hopton Nicholson, says the gorge will remain closed for the truck to be removed.
One was injured based on preliminary information, and the road was impassable. Persons assisted, and they managed to separate the tractor head from the trailer, and so the road is temporarily passable. The wrecker was summoned, and as soon as that heavy-duty wrecker is on scene, we'll have to close the gorge so that the wrecker can remove the tractor from the Rehoboth River. Police personnel are on location, and we ask motorists just to obey and use alternative route when the gorge is closed.
The review of the Auditor General's report on ensuring value for money in public health procurement at the University Hospital of the West Indies resumed today during the latest sitting of the Public Accounts Committee. The committee has agreed to summon several current and former senior officials of the UHWI as its probe into procurement breaches intensifies. Those expected to appear include Chief Executive Officer Fitzgerald Mitchell, former CEO Kevin Allen, and former Board Chairman Wayne Chai Chung. The move follows a request by Committee Chairman Julian Robinson during Tuesday's sitting. In the meantime, Acting Chief Executive Officer of the UHWI, Eric Husson, appeared before the committee providing responses to concerns raised in the audit, specifically addressing key finding number 2. That finding relates to the hospital's non-compliance with requirements of the Government of Jamaica Electronic Procurement Portal.
The first one is the audit findings, key findings 2, non-compliance with JEP portal requirements with respect to 20 of the 800 contracts, or the 20 contracts that were uploaded above 10 million threshold set internally by the UHWI. Our findings, Mr. Chair, is that we identified that 23 were uploaded, and not all 23 were above the threshold of 10 million. In fact, Mr. Chair, what I can say is that there was no consistency in the amounts, meaning that those that were put on, the 23, there were some above 10 million, there were some below 10 million. Of the 700 and plus that were not uploaded, some were above 10 million and some were below. In fact, for those that were not included, you had amounts up to 22 million that was not included, and it ranged from 500,000 to 22 million for those that were not included.
And the total value for those that were not uploaded is $1.6 billion.
$1.6 billion. Yes, Mr. Chair.
That is just totally unacceptable.
The opposition is this afternoon sounding the alarm over what it describes as major gaps in the government's response to Hurricane Melissa, months after the Category 5 system left widespread damage and destruction primarily across western parishes. Speaking at a People's National Party press conference Tuesday morning, opposition leader Mark Golding criticized the governing Jamaica Labour Party's handling of recovery efforts, including delays in establishing the National Reconstruction and Resilience Authority, NARA, and what he says are shortcomings in the government's housing response program, roofs.
Look at what is happening in our country now. The government has dropped the ball, and the people of Jamaica and the economy of Jamaica are suffering as a result of the government's ineptitude in managing the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. The government's primary program for addressing the shelter crisis occasioned by Hurricane Melissa, the roofs program, is hopelessly inadequate and is being incompetently administered.
Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for Western Westmoreland Ian Hale says many residents are still struggling to access financial support, while infrastructure and basic services remain in poor condition.
In terms of JPS and the constituency of Western Westmoreland, I'd probably say around 85 to 90% of our citizens have been restored with electricity thus far. We're having a problem also, I think, within some schools. You have school attendance on the decrease because of what is taking place with the parents. For the farmers in Western Westmoreland, I don't think there's 2,000 coconut trees leaving in Westmoreland, period. So I want to appeal to the Minister of Local Government, to the Prime Minister, and to just ask, how much more can the people of Westmoreland accept or take before they start taking to the streets?
Now, a legal battle is now underway involving two prominent Jamaican companies operating in the construction industry. ARC Manufacturing is claiming that Tankwell Limited is using unfair tactics to try to force its rivals out of business. Tankwell has denied the allegations. Now, ARC has so far taken its complaint to the Fair Trading Commission and has also now taken Tankwell to court. Tankwell has also challenged a decision of the Fair Trading Commission. As Giovanni Dennis now reports, the matter is due back in court on April 23.
At the heart of the dispute is the competition for customers in Jamaica's rebar market. Rebar is short for reinforcing bar and is a high-strength steel bar used to reinforce concrete.
In its complaint to the Fair Trading Commission, ARC alleged that Tankwell is using its dominant position in the market to force competitors out of the sector or prevent them from entering altogether.
According to ARC, between January to July 2024, Tankwell sold rebar for a price of at least $27 per metric ton below costs. ARC also alleged that Tankwell has an unfair competitive advantage over its rivals because it has an exclusive license to operate a sufferance wharf at Rio Bueno in Trelawney. In handing down its decision, the FTC reaffirmed its 2009 assessment that Tanquil's exclusive operation of the Rehoboam port does not give the company an unfair competitive advantage. However, the FTC concluded that Tanquil is likely abusing its dominant position in the rebar market, is therefore substantially lessening competition in the market, and is breaching the Fair Competition Act. The Commission said it would have discussions with Tanquil about reasonable steps to overcome the effects of the abuse. However, Tanquil went to the Supreme Court to challenge the FTC's decision. The court has now ordered that the decision should be stayed until the court hearing on April 23 or until the court makes another order. Tanquil and ARC are also before the court in a lawsuit that ARC filed when it escalated the dispute in November 2025. ARC is asking the Supreme Court for declarations that Tanquil has a dominant position in the market and that it has abused that dominant position by engaging in predatory pricing to lessen competition in breach of the Fair Competition Act. ARC is seeking special damages of over $2 billion, along with general damages for loss of profits and reputational harm, and the damages for breach of the Fair Competition Act, among others.
Tanquil has denied the allegations and is disputing the claim. Tanquil says it competes with ARC and other suppliers through customer service, just-in-time delivery, and high-efficiency warehousing and distribution.
Tanquil also says it competes with strategic locations of its warehouses and economies of scale from bulk purchases and shipping logistics. ARC Systems, the predecessor to ARC Manufacturing, had unsuccessfully accused Tanquil of uncompetitive conduct on 2 previous occasions, in 2000 and in 2009. On both those occasions, the FTC ruled that Tanquil was not breaching the Fair Competition Act. Giovanni Dennis, CVM News.
And it's time now for a break, but stay with us for a live interview when we come back.
I'm me, the stylist, no scam and style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ. Real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress. You charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
Tune in to Lead Story, weekdays at 6 p.m. Hosted by Jody Ann Quarry.
Brought to you by
Horizon, a new loan product from Access Financial Services. It's tax time. There are now 2 due dates for filing final income tax returns. All personal income tax returns, such as self-employed persons, individuals, partners, and partnerships, must file and pay their income tax returns by March 16. For corporate bodies, your income tax return is now due April 15. The due dates for all estimated tax returns filings and quarterly payments remain the same: March 15, June 15, September 15, and December 15. Visit jamaicatax.gov.gm or call 888-TAX-HELP for details. Tax Administration Jamaica, working together to serve you even better.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than...
Welcome back to CVM News at noon. April is Autism Awareness or Acceptance Month, which is dedicated to fostering understanding, inclusion, and acceptance of individuals on the autism spectrum. However, persons living with the condition as well as parents don't think enough support, research, and attention is given to autism. So let's have this conversation. Joining me now in studio, we have Dr. Alua Tumaleo Bewaji Edopa, and she is a consultant pediatrician and founder of Bola Health Medical Center. And also on Zoom we have Kelly Simon. She's a parent whose child has been diagnosed with autism. Now let's start with you, Dr. Edopa. Sometimes parents dismiss children as being disruptive, or them rude, or them antisocial. What are some signs that parents, family members can see from early to determine this child or this individual may be on the spectrum?
Thank you. So these are children who you may find you're speaking to them and they are not responding. It's almost as if they're not hearing you, or as if they are locked up in a world that's separate from you. So they may not make eye contact. They may not point and show you things that they're interested in. They may just not engage as much as another child of the same age. And this is usually noticed from very early. Less than 2 years old. We have a screening that we do at 18 months, that's very important, where we'll look at what their social interaction is. Do they have any repetitive patterns, things like, hand flapping, spinning around, we call that stimming. Is there anything that they do that is rigid? Are they able to move from activity to activity, or are they just very inflexible? So those are some early signs that we can look out for that may point to a child who has autism.
What's usually the age that children are diagnosed with the condition? And also, can you say roughly perhaps how many children we have in Jamaica right now living with the condition?
So we've had some estimates of 1 in 36 children will have autism. And what some of the pediatric, developmental pediatricians will tell you is you have been in school and had classmates who had autism. Because what happens in Jamaica is often we don't actually know that the person may have autism. We are getting to a point where we're more aware. And so you may actually find diagnosis being made by the teachers. Teachers are becoming very good at making the diagnosis. Or even parents may notice that something is different about a classmate. So there is that increase in awareness, and persons are diagnosed later. We even have some being diagnosed in high school, and some adults just notice that they have certain difficulties and they go in and get formal assessments. Typically, diagnosis should be made by about age 2, but in our population, we're still catching up and we're still finding some persons diagnosed later.
Just before I bring in Miss Simon, we find that persons with the condition are usually hypertensive to light and sounds and textures. How can we control this or help them whenever they're exposed?
Right, so hypersensitivity is a very important factor because we live in a world that is very loud, very colorful, very chaotic, and someone with autism may not be able to navigate that as easily. So having less noise, if we're having a function, being cognizant of how loud the volumes are, having the capability of having headphones for that person, support in terms of dimming the lighting, and for children who are in school, they may need to have a shadow, somebody who's with them to help them to navigate that school setting.
All right, Miss Simon, you're on Zoom. Your child is now 9 years old. At what age did you notice that your child may have had autism, and what were some of the information that you received when you reached out for professional help?
So my son is 9, as you said, and he was diagnosed at around 2. I started noticing some of the early signs from about 18 months. And that was in a period when I transitioned, we migrated from Jamaica to Canada, and the early programs that they had, these city programs they had, they would give you these milestone instructions. And then if you had any concerns, they would ask you to see a pediatrician where it could do the assessment.
How would you say the support has been in terms of getting the medical treatment for him, and also the type of support that he has had to receive at home?
So once we received the assessment, In Ontario, where I live, we're given interim funding, and you're able to purchase services such as ABA therapy, that's applied behavior analysis, speech therapy, occupational therapy, and a lot of other things that could include respite or technology support materials. So each province is, so I'm just talking about this in respect to Ontario, where I live, because each province is responsible for healthcare. And so those are the services that you're able to do in the interim until you are able to get core clinical services, which is limited to ABA analysis, speech therapy, occupational therapy, mental health services.
Describe some of the challenges you've had raising a child with autism.
So early on, he's always been verbal, and so that's really helpful because with a nonverbal child, you have to find other means to communicate. So he's verbal, but he was, as Tommy was mentioning, or you're referencing earlier, very hyperactive, more than a normal child, or doesn't listen. So you have to repeat things over and over and over. And what the system does is, what the system does allows to give you those supports, especially in a classroom situation, where each child in Ontario has, with ASD, has an individual education plan, and they're able to structure those supports around each child with a diagnosis. So yeah, that would be some of his challenges. But intellectually, he's at grade level. So I consider myself quite fortunate. But it's mainly social challenges, difficulty making friends, and people would consider him socially awkward. And then when he was younger, extremely hyperactive, don't listen, don't make any eye contact, and so on.
Dr. Edopa, there are also different spectrum levels which requires various level of support for each child. How exactly can parents, though, approach each level to better help their children?
So I think it's very important that once we recognize that there's a child who has delays, whether in speech or just the way that they socialize or communicate, then we get a formal assessment done. And that assessment can guide you in terms of where on the spectrum is your child. Are they more on the severe end of the spectrum where there's limitations in verbal communication, expressive, receptive, or are they more on the higher end of the spectrum, or less intellectually impaired, and where they're able to fully communicate, but they still have that social awkwardness. They may still have challenges in terms of comorbidities with ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or comorbidities with sleep disorders. They may even struggle with things like constipation, etc. So it's recognizing that first step is getting a formal assessment done, and then figuring out where are we on this spectrum, and then tapping into the supports that are available. There are limitations in terms of what can be done for a family that doesn't have means in Jamaica. I think autism spectrum is very dividing. You have those who have means, and so their child can get speech therapy, can get occupational therapy, can get ABA, which is the applied behavioral analysis, but then you have those who just don't, and so they're kind of stuck in this system where they're waiting to get assessments done, they're waiting to get into the like microcare, waiting to get into having a shadow. So there really is kind of a divide based on what your capabilities are financially. So getting the supports that the government offers requires first getting an assessment, often requires a psychoeducational assessment, and just getting things started quickly because everything takes time.
So speaking of support, my final question, I'll throw it to both of you, 10 seconds each. What more do you think can be done to better navigate the environment, the social issues, and the repetitive behavior associated with autistic individuals? Let me start with you, Ms. Simon. What more can be done in 10 seconds?
Well, education is, as more aware, this is important to make us aware, everybody aware of, the differences that we have in our population. And the second thing is funding. We can't have a future, these people are going to grow up into adults, and we need to think of it as a priority to fund the supports so that these children can, develop into adults that are able to manage the world that they're going to live in.
Dr. Adopo?
I think that's a good take home, that we need to support persons with autism because they will grow up into adults, and we will have to navigate a world where we have persons who need to be able to function in some capacity. So if persons without means who are from lower socioeconomic statuses are not able to afford the support services, then those are children who had potential which is kind of locked in. And it's finding a way to help them to unlock that potential so they can kind of optimize their abilities and can contribute to society as they grow.
All right, thank you so much to both of you, Dr. Adopa and Ms. Simon, who's on Zoom, for shedding a light on this very important issue in this Autism Awareness Month. Let's go now to a break, but stay with us. Sports is next.
Must file and pay their income tax return